Hi, welcome back to Spirit Lounge. Apologies for that. There's kind of a bit of a bandwidth issue today, or the processing on my laptop isn't too great, so that introduction wasn't supposed to look like that. Okay, so we're embarking upon the final video of the Khuddaka Nikaya. And this is called the Khuddaka Nipato, which is the first one. There are others part of this video as well. And so let's embark upon that, and hopefully it's got some valuable content here. Okay, so the Tipitaka, as you know, is all the Dhamma teachings. I do go through this every video, every introduction, and this is the fifth of 5 collections, which are called Nikayas. It's all the Buddhist teachings combined into the Pali itself, and the Nikaya as well. It has got some most. It's one of them regarded as the most important text, part of the text. It's taught to young monks, but also has some of the major tenets of the Buddhist doctrine within it, and some precepts as well. So it's got a lot of focus areas, and as we've gone through those, I would agree with that statement as well. Okay, the Catukka Nipato, and how kindness should beget kindness, and how a good king of Benares is defeated in a border conflict with rebels and flees to a village where only a poor inhabitant offers him shelter. On how a householder is consumed with grief at the death of his beloved brother, and how the Buddha assuaged the householder's grief by preaching to him on the impermanence of all compounded things. On the virtuelessness and futility of severe asceticism. Now this is what I was referring to before. Flogging oneself, depriving oneself of music, laughter and joy and dancing is severe asceticism and will not get you any additional brownie points. This is a falsehood, and there are many who practice severe asceticism or severe ritual behavior, thinking they are getting closer to God. The passage to the Divine Father is not through suffering. That is all you need to know. And so severe asceticism is an act of futility, and I would say foolishness, such as laying on a bed of thorns and burning the body in flame. Again, the Buddhist who sets themselves on fire in protest is not fulfilling anything virtuousness. It's just a severe act of suicide, really, and it will not benefit them in their passage towards merit. On the evil monk Devadatta, who created a schism with the Buddha's community, had hot blood spray from his mouth in a torrent after he finished preaching his first sermon after breaking with the Buddha. On right speech, on the dangers of loquaciousness, on how a king's counselor warns the king about talking at the wrong time, using the story of a cuckoo to illustrate his point, on how a king's just rule leads to a heavenly rebirth, and a king's unjust rule leads to rebirth in hell. On the requirement of all to pursue the good, on how the king of Benares forbid the sacrifice of living creatures. This enraged the evil yakas, who sent an assassin to kill the king. The assassin yaka is stopped by the god Saka. Pansaka Nipato, on the Brahmin who tested the value of virtue over learning. In learning that virtue is supreme, he decided to perfect his goodness, joined the Buddha's community, and won enlightenment after a time. On the working of karma, on why a monk, despite attaining enlightenment, barely received enough alms to stay alive. This is maybe karmic, so he's got gnosis but didn't receive alms for a reason. Chaka Nipato, on how a young Brahmin decides to abandon worldly things to take up the holy life as an ascetic, and with the falling of a leaf comes to instant enlightenment and is miraculously transported to a cave in the Himalayas to live the holy life of a solitary Buddha. On a Magadha and convinces the king to renounce his throne and live the holy life. On how the Buddha had renounced his royal palace, undertaken great journeys, attained supreme wisdom, set the wheel of Dhamma rolling, performed miracles, coveted multitudes, travelled far many times, to encourage enlightenment in just a single person, and all this for the good of the world. On how the Buddha had travelled afar many times just for the good of the world. On how an ascetic smells a lotus growing in a pond in a jungle and is accused by a goddess of stealing the lotus's scent. Remember, the lotus flower, the centre is the Divine Father. The petals are the gnosis, or the passages that you must traverse. Okay, the Pitaka Nipato. On how the evil monk Devadatta had the earth open up beneath his feet and swallowing him down and into hell. On how Devadatta and his followers had come to ruin many times before. On how the heavenly creature Baka came to believe the false doctrine of permanence, that existence was eternal and unchanging. On how, through dialogue, the Buddha converted Baka to the true doctrine of impermanence. On how the Buddha sensed that a group of 500 monks were in the grip of lustful desires. The Buddha calls desires and how it is wise to be afraid of such dangers, as the tree is rightly afraid of the parasitic shoots of the banyan tree. Khuddaka Nipato. On how laypersons can gain much merit by fasting and keeping the holy days, keeping the 5 moral precepts, extinguishing anger and cultivating kindness. On how a labourer who observed half of a holy day and on account of this merit making was reborn a good and generous king who shared his kingship with poor man. Whatsoever one saves from the home ablaze, that which is saved is still one's possession. The world is a fire and death, and decay are its flame. That which is saved by charity is all that one may save. On how a monk regressed in the holy life on account of his desire of women. The Buddha warned him that women can never be satisfied due to their passionate, inconstant nature. Well, take that how you will, but don't be triggered by that. Remember the nature and the time it was written. Okay, Navaka Nipato. On how a monk was tempted by worldly thoughts, and the Buddha's comment that even the greatest of men can be tempted by worldly thoughts. Yes, allow yourselves allow yourselves to drop from discernment from time to time, and allow yourself and forgive yourself for your indiscretions. On how a monk backslid in the holy life as he desired women. The Buddha wondered why he desired women when women were overly passionate. Again, remember when this was written, and don't be triggered by these statements. Dasaka Nipato. On a stubbornness, on karma, on the wages of faithlessness and sin, and the painful fate of Mita Vidanka, a merchant banker's son who had to bear on his head a razor-sharp disc. On the perfect wisdom, the Buddha, and how the Buddha had such a great wisdom, even knowledge of his past lives. On how the wise man informed 4 good kings that were equally good. On how the Buddha used his perfect wisdom to tame the wild Yaka spirit Punaka. On the monk who could not control himself, who was passionate, angry, stubborn and mean, and the Buddha commented that even in ancient days holy men were able to control their passions. On how the schism created by monk Devadatta stated that the Buddha has taught him nothing, holding up a blade of grass. He states the Buddha hadn't done him even a single measure of good equal the blade of grass. Hence he split and went his own way, I assume. It's presumed from that. Eka Dasaka Nipato. On the importance of eliminating even the smallest of sins, on how 500 monks were all struggling with eliminating their worldly passion, and the Buddha encouragement for them to work to eliminate even the smallest hint of passion. On how reflecting on one's sins can lead to progression in the holy life, and the attainment of the statue of Pika Buddha, a lone Buddha, a Buddha on their own path, or a private Buddha, which is what the Pakika Buddha is. On the origin and virtues of the Buddha and the great renunciation of the world made by the Buddha. On other names for Benares. On how dewdrops rise up in the cool of morning but get burned off by the rising sun. On how fate of dewdrops lead to a great prince to renounce his throne for the holy life of an ascetic in the Himalayas. There are many parables in this script, as you can see. Okay, Devdasaka Nipato. On the perfect knowledge of the Buddha, on how a merchant's wise son proved himself wise, and the 4 false wise men proved themselves fools. On how the false wise men attempted to bring upon the one true wise man. Okay, the Apaka Nipato. The Kariya Pitaka ends with the 8 short verses spoken by the Buddha in declaration of his self-awakening and summary of his doctrine. These verses as a firing coda to the Kirana Pitaka and the great Sutta Pitaka itself. And this was, after lifetimes of suffering and lifetimes of happiness, I came to the highest self-awakening. I bestowed those gifts which were to be bestowed. I have lived the highest morality. Thus I came to the highest self-awakening. I have sought knowledge from the wise. I have demonstrated highest effort. I have lived the highest patience. Thus I came to the highest self-awakening. I have been unshakable in my determination. I have spoken only truth. I have lived the highest loving kindness. Thus I came to the highest self-awakening. I have been indifferent to good and bad fortune, to praise and denunciation, to honour and dishonours. Thus I came to the highest self-awakening. See laziness as evil and action as good. This is the Buddha's doctrine. See dispute and strife as evil and harmony as good. This is the Buddha's doctrine. See carelessness as evil and diligence as good, and cultivate the noble eightfold path. This is the Buddha's doctrine. Okay, and finally, the Milinda Panho Nipato. It's the Burmese Tipitaka contains the Milinda Panho, which documents the discussion on Buddhist doctrine between King Milinda and Arahat Nagasena. Remember, Arahat is one who takes a spiritual life purpose. Milinda's questions serve several purposes, adding greater definition or explanation to elements of the Buddha's doctrine and discipline. Now, these were many, and I just pulled out a few from the list. On the nature of the individual to understand this, on the nature of breathing and the soul, meditation and the soul's movement to the Divine Father, on the goal of forsaking the world, on reincarnation, this is removing detachment, removing your soul's reincarnation tendency, on the role of virtue, not self-righteous, egotistic virtue, on the role of concentration, which is practicing meditation, on whether the individual exists as an individual, removal from the nature and the abiding of self, on the existence of the soul. Remember, the soul is the reflection of the spirit, but its movement away from it. The relationship between the karma and nibbana, the nature of migrating from one's existence to another, on the self, on loving kindness, on karma and the nature of good and evil, and the fate of the monk Devadatta over many lifetimes, on the existence of kayas, which is the enlightened mind, the new true nature of all sentient beings, on the power of virtue and sin, on nibbana and its relationship with those who attain nibbana, on questioning and the use of taking up the holy life, of the fruits of the holy life can be attained without living the holy life, and if the fruits of the holy life can be attained without living the holy life, which we know is not the case. Okay, I want to say thank you for listening. And remember, the second coming will always be you. In other words, the church is within you, and that's where it will always be. You'll traverse many passages as you go through the narrow channel to the Divine Father, but they will always end up with the passage into your own church, the bridal chamber within your own soul it seeks to move back into the grace and the frequency of the Father, which is what it is actually doing. It's moving through the torus of gnosis, and the light above is the Father. Make sure it's transformative, not just virtuous and egotistic, because it will not have any transformative reality to you. This is the truth. Okay, I want to say thank you for listening to this. I want to say thank you again to all those who join my videos and those who drop in and out of lives. I see them coming and going. Please leave comments. Please refer this to others who will help, and let me know what you think, what you'd like me to concentrate on, what other passages or scriptures we'd like to concentrate on that you'd like to know yourselves, and whether you find this useful because it's part of my own journey and passage and my own gnosis and my path to Nibbana itself is the reason why I do this as well. So again, thank you for this. We have finished all the Nikayas, but we are going to continue through the Tipitaka because there's one other chapter and a summary of all of the definitions in it coming, and that should finish off the Buddhist journey that we're taking together. Again, thank you so much for this, for joining, and God bless until next time, and thank you.